Hello everybody, welcome to this week's update video. My name is Martin and I'm an Inkscape developer and I develop features and fixes for everyday Inkscape users. Welcome to these videos where we talk about some of the work that's been going on inside the Inkscape project and especially the work that I've been up to. If you don't know, I am essentially an Inkscape developer who is paid by you guys. You guys directly sponsor me through LibrePay and through Patreon. And it means that instead of getting a job with some company or spending time on private contracts, I get to spend time working on the issues that are most important to you. And I make these videos to keep you informed about what's happening. So this video is slightly late because I actually went on a road trip in order to fix my nephew's computer. But I'm back now, and when I got back, there was actually a pile of messages for me relating to last week's video when we talked about the user experience in Inkscape and the new paint order widget that we had put in. So let's have a look at some of the comments that I managed to get for last week's video. This one is from Tobias from Patreon. He says, I think it would be more logical to make the paint order widget vertical and add a hint that it is possible to drag and drop the objects. So Tobias, yeah, you're absolutely right. And the original intention for the design was that it was vertical. But the technical limitations for the widget that we were using in order to implement the drag and dropping was that it could only do it horizontally. And we actually had a follow-up to fix it so that it could also do things vertically. What I showed you was essentially the technical preview. I was showing you the idea rather than the final design. And I want to apologize to everybody for essentially confusing you all about what my intention was and what it would actually look like in the final result. Essentially, I was focusing more on a user experience level instead of a design prettiness. But I understand that the only thing that you guys could see was the prettiness, was the actual design. So sorry about that. Yes. So okay. So what's next? Peppertop Comics says a vertical layout would make more intuitive sense to me. Oh, okay, we've covered that. Federico Manoyo Venier says, if I needed to choose a stacking order, I would expect it to have a vertical UI. Okay. Make it vertical and an icon to show you can drag from Tota. The best way to do this is to make the widget vertical. Duncan. And it would make more sense. Yes, it would be more intuitive if it was vertical instead of horizontal. And so one of these has to be not related to that. You should put them vertically. Okay, so clearly there was a theme behind these letters. If you guys have a comment that you'd like to leave, please leave it down below. You can also talk to me on Patreon. You can also chat with us, with the entire team behind Inkscape on chat.inkscape.org, especially if you're interested in contributing to the project. But yes, essentially the problem is that widget that I showed you was incomplete. Mykov actually spent some time during this week implementing the vertical layout, as you can see, and implementing the little drag icon. And before you comment, I have asked that the little drag indicator be put on the right-hand side instead of the left-hand side. I think that it's cluttered on the left-hand side with the icon for the drag. And there's also been a bunch of other widget fixes as well. So as well as the paint order being vertical, I also made it so that it hides the marker option when there are no markers applied. This is not something that you could have done in the 6 buttons orientation, but it is something you can do with this particular design. What this basically means is that for the vast majority of people, the only thing that they'll be choosing is the paint order is between fill and stroke. Right, because most people don't actually have markers on their graphics, and so this should make it very, very easy. Although people might be asking, why would you have a whole widget to do this whole thing if it's just a selection between 2 things? But that's okay, because sometimes it's 3 things, and that's important. Okay, so as well as the stroke properties and making those a little bit more consistent, I have actually been working with the rest of the developer team on essentially tidying up how the code itself is laid out in Inkscape, right? And the way in which we want to do it is to make generic widgets, things that should be reused. We've got to put all those into a singular directory, and I've created a README that for developers so that they understand what kinds of things belong in that directory, and rules, this is important, about how code separation works. These are simple things like if you're going to create a generic widget, then it mustn't actually involve Inkscape data or assumptions about SVG or, it's things like that, right? If it's generic, it really needs to mean generic. These are rules which hopefully will allow going forwards that Inkscape can develop in a more consistent way. Part of that process was actually eliminating duplication. So we had a bunch of widgets that were essentially the same thing, but they looked different. That's very inconsistent. Inkscape is obviously based on GTK, but we need a lot of a lot of customized widgets in order to be able to do a lot of the things that we do. But not so customized that different parts of our own interface have used different widgets for the same thing. You'll notice in this particular screenshot that I show that the opacity and blur, we call them scale bars, are now visually distinct. That's because the scale bar in object properties was actually a new one, and we have decided to settle on a single scale bar and having multiple widgets. Let me know what you think about this particular widget. One of the other things that needs to be harmonized is the scale buttons. There is a new set of scale buttons for the object properties, and I want to make them more consistently used in other parts. This includes toolbars, this includes fill and stroke dialog, etc., etc. Scale buttons, if you're unaware, are the buttons that contain numbers, and there are a plus or negative sign or left and right buttons that move the number up and down. Right, and there's also other controls like scroll wheel and page up, page down, and various other things that control the movement of the number. So I want to show on the screen the design intention that I have. This is not the final way in which it will look, maybe, but it is a user experience consideration, which is the idea of having a number and a unit. So that means that if it is something which is in centimeters, it says 4 centimeters, for example. And the unit will be a core part of the spin button itself instead of being a separate drop down. This means that it's more obvious when you type in a new number, you can actually type in a unit as well. And in fact, you can actually type in mathematics. One of the merge requests that I got in was to write some unit tests for the mathematics component. Because it was completely untested, and I needed to make sure that it actually could achieve what I wanted it to achieve, which was that if you put in a set of units, it actually could handle that correctly. So as well as that sort of harmonization process, I need to also make sure that these widgets are functionally equivalent. And so that means bringing in functionality from different widgets and bringing them all together so that they're all in one place. But in doing that, it needs to actually meet with users' expectations for the kinds of uses that they're going to put this particular dialogue or this particular thing into. So do have a look and let me know what you think about these particular spin buttons and the particular design that I want to be able to achieve. Mykov isn't convinced that having the units inside the spin button is a good idea, but I honestly think that it is a good idea because I think it harmonizes what the number is better than having a drop-down box which is somewhere else on the toolbar or somewhere else in the dialog, and it also allows you it to be more obvious where you have things like some units that we have could have units attached to them, but we don't attach units to them because there's not enough space to put a drop-down box. But if they're harmonized inside of the widget, then all of these boxes can have units where units make sense. Examples for that are like the mitre length, for example. Okay, so as well as the refactoring and the test stuff, let's talk about some of the things that are going on in Inkscape that I haven't been up to. That this is, it's a pretty big project, and you can actually contribute yourself if you would like. Thank you to the people who actually watch these videos and then they join Inkscape. It's really great to see that this is a sort of outreach that allows people to feel more confident about joining the project and knowing that their help is appreciated and actually goes towards making Inkscape better. Even if you can't afford to sponsor me, the time that you spend reposting these on social media or helping somebody else with their Inkscape problem or creating tutorials goes into making a more healthy ecosystem. So let's start off with Charlotte, who fixed the Garaud mesh. I'm bad at French, I'm sorry. This is a type of mesh gradient in PDF, and when you open those PDF files in Inkscape, I think we were, if I understand this correctly, we were creating a PDF that was just way too big, and she's managed to fix that. Good work. PBS Mark and Rene and others have all been working hard this week on fixing build issues. Some strange problem cropped up with the build, and it's been basically causing developers to be unable to actually compile Inkscape. We think this is just a CMake build tools problem where we were getting away with a particular thing, and then we fixed a problem, and that fix caused us to realize that we actually had a bigger problem, and so they've been working on that. Mykov added the object ID box back into the object properties dialog. He removed it on the idea that the ID wasn't particularly useful, but on review, and when I talked to multiple people who had different, so we say, more technical workflows, so they're not working on design and art, they're more working on CNC or integrating into other tools, the ID is really important. And it's especially important if you have things like JavaScript, right? And you're making a web page from your SVG file. So he's put that box back in, which is great. It's not on the top where it used to be. It's actually in the same section as name and description. This is probably correct in terms of how important the ID is. For the vast majority of users, the ID isn't important, but it is important that it's there somewhere. Rishab, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, fix some mnemonics in the toolbar. These are where you can use the keyboard to quickly go to a specific widget. Ayan fixed an issue with the opacity not being applied to the last style if you were using the layers dialog. So the layers dialog has the ability to click on the eye and actually set the opacity. That opacity wasn't being set correctly in the last used style, so there was an inconsistency between the fill and stroke dialog and the layers dialog in terms of what setting those styles did in preferences. So he's cleaned that up. And there's a bunch of other things going on. Vector's team are having a look at the social media platform policy that I put together a few months ago. And I think the project itself is looking to getting more up-to-date accounting from our fiscal sponsor, so we can have up-to-date graphs and communicate how much money we're spending versus how much money we're raising in donations. And so stuff is moving. We've got Stripe that's hopefully going to be implemented into our website and hopefully allow people to use credit cards directly with Inkscape for both donations and for other kinds of activities. Those will be good. Most of those are administration things. Most of those are about making the Inkscape project itself able to have a greater capacity to interact with users and get more, should we say, like more economic machinery moving, because we'd love to be able to actually hire more people and do more work and have greater attention put to Inkscape, so that some of these problems don't take 5 years to fix but can be fixed in a more reasonable time frame. But for that we need funding, and for that we need the infrastructure to be able to handle that kind of donation structure. So thank you all for watching this video. I hope you've had a really good week, and I will see you next time.